He was a methodical predator. He expected fear. He expected tears. But on this night, he chose the wrong girl. His 17-year-old victim had just finished writing her own suicide note. She had nothing left to lose. Instead of screaming, she was silent. Instead of begging, she analyzed. And instead of panicking, she made him an offer. A proposal so twisted, so dark, that it terrified the monster himself. This is the incredible, true, inspired story of a suffocating psychological battle where the prey turns the tables and makes the hunter run for his life. You will not believe what happened in that room. If you love psychological thrillers that keep you on the edge of your seat, smash that like button and subscribe to the channel right now to follow this entire mind-bending story. You do not want to miss this. The clock on the wall of the diner did not tick. It hummed. It was a low, electric sound, the only constant thing in Elara's world for the past 8 hours. It was a sound that vibrated in her teeth, a sound she felt more than she heard. She wiped the counter for the 3rd time, her cloth moving in slow, wet circles over a surface that was already clean. The smell of burnt coffee and old grease hung in the air, a familiar blanket that she barely noticed anymore. It was late. Or perhaps it was early. The time was 1:30 in the morning. Sal, the owner and night shift cook, grunted from the kitchen, the sound of a metal spatula scraping hard against the flat-top grill. "You can clock out, Elara. Go home." Elara nodded, though he could not see her. She did not say goodnight. She simply slipped out of her apron, the strings untying with a practiced pull, and hung it on the hook by the swinging door. She moved quietly. She had learned to move so quietly that people often forgot she was in the room. She was a 17-year-old ghost, haunting a 24-hour diner. Her pay for the shift was on the counter. A small pile of bills and coins. She counted it. $5.21 in tips. She slid the money into the pocket of her thin jacket. It made no sound. She pushed through the heavy glass door. The night air was cool, but she did not feel it. She felt a strange, hollow lightness, a sense of purpose that had been building inside her for weeks. Tonight was the night. The thought did not bring fear. It brought a profound, settled calm. He was waiting, just as she knew he would be. Liam. His car, a long, low thing that always rumbled like it was angry, was parked in the shadows at the far end of the new paved lot. He was older, maybe 20, maybe 21, with a way of looking at her that made her feel both invisible and pinned down at the same time. He was not her boyfriend. He was just Liam. She slid into the passenger seat. The vinyl was cracked and cold against her legs. He did not say hello, he just looked at her. "You're late," he said. His voice was low. "I had to clean," she replied. It was a lie. She had been standing by the counter, waiting for the clock to hum its way to the right minute. He grunted, a sound not unlike Sal's spatula. He started the car. The engine's rumble filled the small space. He drove, not toward her home, but toward the old access road behind the industrial park, the one place they ever went. The drive was short, silent. When he parked, he turned to her. The only light came from a distant security lamp, and it just caught the hard line of his jaw. He reached for her. His touch was not gentle. It was demanding, a pressure. This was their routine, the desperate, physical escape she had mistaken for comfort months ago. It was a frantic, clumsy collision. A way to feel something, even if that something was just the uncomfortable press of his body and the smell of the cheap pine air freshener dangling from his mirror. She closed her eyes and detached, a skill she had perfected. She went far away in her mind, to a place that was quiet and empty. When it was over, the silence that fell was heavier than before. He did not hold her. He did not speak. He simply started the car again. The emptiness she felt was vast, a confirmation. Liam was not an escape. He was just another locked door. "See you tomorrow?" he asked. His voice flat as he pulled up a block away from her house. Elara just nodded, her hand already on the door handle. She got out and did not look back. She heard his car accelerate away, the sound fading into the night's oppressive quiet. Her house was dark. She did not need a light. She knew every creak in the floorboards, every sticking point on the stairs. She slid her key into the lock, turning it with a slow, practiced motion to muffle the sound of the bolt. The house was full of a different kind of silence than the diner. This silence was heavy, watchful. It was the silence of her grandmother, asleep in the downstairs bedroom, and the silence of the man who was not her grandfather. She closed the door, the soft click echoing in the hall. Working hard. Elara. She froze. His voice came from the living room, thick with sleep and something else. He was on the couch. The only light was the faint, blue glow of the television, which he had left on with the sound muted. She could not see him, but she could feel him. She could feel his attention move over her, a heavy, unwanted blanket. It was a feeling she had endured for 3 years, ever in her own home. "Yes," she said. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Your grandmother left you some food. On the stove. I'm not hungry. Good night." She started to move toward the stairs, her feet silent on the worn runner. "Elara." She stopped, her back to him. She did not turn. "You're a good girl," he said. The words crawled over her skin. She felt the heat of his presence, even from across the room. She did not reply. She just moved, taking the stairs 2 at a time, light as smoke, until she reached the safety of her room and shut the door, turning the small, flimsy lock. She stood in the dark, her heart a cold, hard knot in her chest. The safety was false. The lock was a suggestion, not a barrier, but it did not matter, not anymore. She sat at her small wooden desk. She took out a single piece of paper from her school notebook and a pen. She did not turn on the light. She did not need to. She knew what she had to write. The words had been practicing themselves in her mind for weeks. She began, "Please don't be sad. It's not your fault. I'm just tired. I have been tired for a very long time. I need to rest now." She thought of her younger sister, who lived with her father in another state, another life. She almost added her name, a final, "I love you," but she stopped. It would make it too real. It would hurt too much. She finished the note, signed only her name. She read it over, though she could not see the ink. She knew the shape of the words. It was not angry. It was not sad. It was just finished. A strange peace settled over her, warm and complete. This was the one thing she could control. This was the final escape. This was the door she could choose to walk through, all by herself. She folded the paper once and placed it carefully in the center of her pillow, where it would be found first. She checked the small, glowing face of her alarm clock. 3:00 in the morning. Spelled out in her mind. It was time. She picked up her bicycle key from the desk. She did not take her house keys. She did not take the $5.21 from her pocket. She unlocked her bedroom door, her movements slow and deliberate. She slipped back down the stairs, past the living room where the man was now snoring, a low, wet sound. She unlocked the front door, the bolt sliding back with a faint shing of metal. She stepped out into the cool, silent street. The decision was made. The note was written. She was free. She retrieved the bicycle from the side of the house, her movements fluid and practiced. The machine was old, but she had oiled the chain herself. It made almost no sound as she wheeled it onto the pavement. She swung her leg over the frame and pushed off. The street was empty. The houses on either side were dark, sleeping shapes, their details lost to the night. The only sound was the faint, rhythmic whir of her tires on the asphalt and the quiet click of the chain. The air was cool, and it moved against her face as she picked up speed. It felt clean. She pedaled with a steady, even rhythm, not rushing. She knew exactly where she was going. The old bridge over the dry canal, miles from town. It was a place where no one ever went. The strange, settled peace from her bedroom remained. This was her decision. This movement, this final act, was hers. The silence of the town was her accomplice. She felt a profound sense of lightness, as if the weight that had pressed down on her for 3 years, the feeling of his presence in the living room, the memory of Liam's clumsy demands, the hum of the diner clock, had finally dissolved. She was just herself, moving through the quiet. She turned onto the main road, the one that led out of the residential blocks. Here, the silence was even deeper. She passed the closed bakery, the dark laundromat, the silent gas station. Then, a new sound. It was low, a vibration more than a noise, a thrumming. She slowed her pedaling, letting the bicycle coast. The sound was steady, an engine, idling. It was coming from the parking lot of the old church, set back from the road. A flicker of annoyance, sharp and unexpected, cut through her calm. Her plan required solitude. She had counted on the world being asleep. A parked car meant a person, a variable. She hesitated, her feet hovering over the pedals. It was nothing, just someone, like Liam, meeting in the dark. It had nothing to do with her. She pushed the thought away. It did not matter. Nothing mattered anymore except reaching the bridge. She began to pedal again, faster this time, wanting to be past the sound, past the interruption. She fixed her mind on the canal, on the feeling of release. She passed the entrance to the church lot. The idling sound was louder here, a deep rumble. She passed the alley, the narrow space between the church and the next building. A sound, a single sound. The scrape of a heavy boot on gravel. It was the only warning. Before she could turn, before she could even process the sound, a force struck her from the side. It was not a push, it was an impact, a wall of momentum that hit her and the bicycle simultaneously. The world tilted. She was airborne for a second, separated from the machine, and then she met the pavement. The impact was brutal. It knocked the breath from her lungs in a painful burst. Her head struck the ground, not hard, but enough to stun her. She tasted grit and the metallic tang of her own lip. She lay still, unable to breathe, her mind a blank, ringing void. Then, presence. A heavy weight kneeled beside her. A hand, large and rough, clamped over her mouth, sealing off the gasp she was trying to take. The smell was wrong, not coffee, not Liam's pine air freshener, but soap, a harsh, industrial soap, and the faint scent of oil. A voice spoke, low and calm, directly into her ear. It was not a shout, it was a simple, flat instruction. Be silent. And then she felt it. Something cold, something small and perfectly round. It pressed against the skin of her temple. The sensation was electric. It cut through the shock, through the numbness. This was not the end she had planned. This was not her choice. This was an invasion. The cold circle remained pressed to her head, a promise. The hand still covered her mouth, suffocating. She was lifted. The strength was effortless. She was hauled to her feet as if she weighed nothing. Her legs buckled, but the grip held her upright. She was being moved, dragged several steps. She heard a sound, a soft thunk, a car door opening. The sound of the idling engine she had heard from the street. It had been waiting. Rough fabric was pulled across her face, tight. It scratched her skin and smelled faintly of dust and something else, something metallic. It was pulled tight, blinding her, the knot secured behind her head. The hand left her mouth, only to grab her arm. The cold circle left her temple, but she could still feel its phantom pressure. "Get in," the voice commanded. She was pushed, forced to stumble forward. She fell onto a seat. The door slammed shut, and the sound of the outside world, the faint night breeze, the distant hum of the highway, was gone. She was inside, in the dark, with the sound of the rumbling engine and the smell of industrial soap. The peace was gone. The plan was gone. There was only the cold, hard realization that she had not escaped. She had just been caught. The car door slammed, sealing her in. The sound was heavy, final. Darkness. The blindfold was rough against her skin, but the blackness behind her eyes was deeper, more complete than the fabric. The engine's idle, which had been a low rumble from the outside, was now a vibration that ran through the floor, up her legs, and settled deep in her chest. Then, the car lurched. They were moving. Elara's first sensation was not panic. It was not the wild, screaming terror she might have expected. Instead, her mind felt strangely empty, a ringing void where the shock of the pavement had momentarily wiped everything away. The end she had planned, the quiet bridge, the note on her pillow. It all felt thin, like a story she had read about someone else. This was immediate. This was solid. The air in the car was stale. She breathed in slowly, through her nose. The smell of industrial soap was strong, overpowering. Beneath it, she could sense the faint, acrid tang of old coffee and something metallic, like oiled tools. The man beside her, the voice, was silent. He was just a presence, a weight in the driver's seat. She could hear the faint shush of his clothing as he moved his arm to steer. She forced her breathing to be even, slow. This was a skill she knew. When the man who was not her grandfather was in the house, she had learned to breathe so quietly, to make her presence so small that she could almost disappear. She was doing it now. She was not screaming, she was not crying. A bizarre, cold clarity began to settle over her, pushing aside the ringing void. She had been on her way to an end. A different, unknown end had found her first. The irony of it was sharp and bitter, a taste in the back of her mouth like old pennies. The car continued to move. She focused on the sensations. The vibration of the engine felt uneven, a thrum-thrum pause that suggested the machine was old or in need of repair. The tires hummed against the asphalt. She heard a faint click. The sound repeated. Click, click, click. A turn signal. The car slowed, and she felt the gentle pull of inertia as they made a turn. She filed the sensation away. The silence from the driver's seat was absolute. It was not a nervous silence. It was a calm, patient, heavy silence. He was breathing, but she could not hear it. He was existing beside her with a stillness that was far more terrifying than any rage could have been. He was waiting for something. He was waiting for her to break. The realization landed in her mind with the weight of a stone. He was waiting for the tears, the pleading, the begging. He was expecting a victim's sounds, and she was giving him nothing. The cold, hollow feeling that had lived inside her for months, the numbness that had allowed her to write that final note and walk out of her house, was still there. It had not shattered. It had only changed. It had become a shield. "You are quiet." His voice. It was the same as before, low, calm, flat. It was not a question, it was an observation. It cut through the hum of the engine, and she felt the small hairs on her arms stand up. She did not answer. She did not move. She just breathed. In, out. She felt his attention shift. It was a palpable thing, a pressure in the small space, as if he had turned his head to look at her, even though she could not see him. "Most of them are not quiet," he said. His words hung in the air. Most of them? The implication was a sudden, icy plunge, a feeling of falling. This was not the first time. This was a routine. The church, the car, the voice, the cold circle at her temple. He had done this before, and the others had made noise. Elara's mind, which had been so numb, suddenly sparked. It was not fear. It was something else. A cold, sharp point of curiosity. This was a deviation. Her silence was a problem for him. She felt a tiny, almost imperceptible shift in her own power. She had none. She was blindfolded, captured. But her silence, the very emptiness that had been destroying her, was now an anomaly. It was something he had not planned for. "I can make you make noise," he said, his voice still holding that horrifying, patient calm. The phantom pressure of the cold circle bloomed on her temple. She remembered the feeling perfectly. Elara did not flinch. She just turned her head slightly, a small, slow movement in his general direction. She still said nothing. There was a long pause. The car hit a bump, and she was jostled in her seat. She heard him exhale, a short, sharp sound. It was the sound of annoyance. It was the first mistake he had made. It was the first sign that he was a man, and not just a voice. He was annoyed. She had gotten under his skin simply by being empty. The car continued to drive, and Elara, in the total, sensor-deprived darkness, began to focus. She felt the car slow for another turn. She counted it. That was 2. The car slowed, the uneven vibration of the engine smoothing out as it idled. She felt the slight dip and roll of a vehicle pulling onto a different, rougher surface. Then, a final stop. The engine cut. The silence that flooded the car was immediate and absolute. It was heavier than the silence of the street, heavier than the silence of her home. It was a thick, waiting silence. "We are here," the voice said. The words hung in the stale air. Her door opened. The night air, cool and damp, rushed in, a brief shock against her skin before he grabbed her arm. His grip was a vice. He hauled her out. She stood on unsteady legs. The ground beneath her feet was not pavement. It felt loose, like gravel or dirt. "Walk." He pushed her forward. She stumbled, her feet trying to find purchase. She felt the hard surface of the car against her hip for a second, then she was moving away from it. Her foot hit something solid, a raised edge. "A step, up," he commanded. She lifted her foot. The step was concrete, cold through the thin sole of her shoe. He was right behind her, his hand still clamped on her arm, propelling her upward. Her mind, cold and clear, began to count. 1. Another step. 2. She focused on the number. on the feel of the concrete under her feet, on the steady, upward motion. 3, 4, 5. The air smelled different here, slightly damp, with a faint, musty odor, like a stairwell that never saw the Sunday. 6, 7, 8. Her only guide was his grip, pulling her, and the expected impact of the next step. Nina. 10, 11, 12. They stopped. She stood on a flat landing. She heard a metallic sound, a jangling. A key. A sound, close to her face, a key sliding into a lock, a click, a heavier thunk as a deadbolt was turned. A door opened. The air that flowed out was different. It was warm and completely still, and it carried a strong, clean chemical smell. It was sharp, sterile. He pushed her inside. The surface under her feet changed. It was soft. Carpet. The door closed behind them. The lock and the deadbolt were re-engaged. She was in a new space. The sounds were muffled. The air was thick. The only smell was that harsh, clean odor, and the industrial soap that clung to him. He let go of her arm, only to shove her hard in the back. She stumbled forward into the darkness, her hands outstretched. Her fingers brushed a wall. It was smooth, cool. He shoved her again, harder. She fell, not onto a floor. She landed on a yielding surface, soft, one that sighed with a faint huff as her weight hit it. A mattress. She froze. She heard him moving. She heard the sound of fabric, of a belt buckle. This was it. The numbness that had been her shield began to crack, and for the first time, a cold, sharp spike of real fear lanced through her. The bridge, the note, they felt 1,000 years away. She felt the mattress dip as his weight came down beside her. She felt the pressure of his presence, the heat of his body. His breathing was different now. It was not the calm, patient breathing of the car. It was faster. It was an eager, ugly sound. Elara's mind did what it had been trained to do. It did what it had learned in the living room of her home, what it had practiced in the front seat of Liam's car. She closed her eyes behind the blindfold. She left. She was not in the room. She was not on the mattress. She was far away, in the quiet, empty place in her mind. She began to count again, not steps, just numbers, backward from 100, 99, 98. The violation happened. It was impersonal. It was brutal. It was a pressure and a weight and a pain. But it was happening to a body she was no longer inhabiting. She was a ghost, and this was just a thing happening to an empty shell. She focused on the sound of the diner clock, the low, electric hum. She focused on the number in her head, 74, 73. She was aware of his sounds, his frustrated grunts. He was seeking a reaction. He wanted the fear he had been denied in the car. He wanted the tears, the pleading, the terror. He got nothing. He got silence. He got a detached, absent form. The weight lifted abruptly. She heard him breathing, hard. It was the sound of anger. "Look at me," he hissed. She could not. "Stop that," he ordered, his voice no longer calm, but sharp with frustration. She did not know what he meant. He had wanted to possess her fear, to consume it. But there was nothing there for him. The unwanted, twisted intimacy he had tried to force had failed. He had violated a body, but her mind had remained untouched, 1,000 miles away. She heard him move across the room, the sound of his footsteps on the carpet, angry and heavy. A door opened. A door slammed shut. She was alone. She lay in the total, silent, chemical-smelling darkness, still blindfolded, her mind slowly, cautiously returning to her empty shell. She was on the mattress, and she was, for the moment, by herself. And she knew, with a sudden, cold certainty, that her absence had infuriated him. She lay perfectly still in the echoing silence. The only sound was the faint, muffled hum of some distant appliance, a sound so low it was almost a feeling. The blindfold was still tight, a rough, dark presence against her face. The chemical smell of the room was sharp in her nostrils. The pain from the assault was a dull, spreading throb, a deep ache that her mind acknowledged but did not focus on. It was a physical fact, like the softness of the mattress beneath her or the stale, warm air. The numbness that had been her shield, the cold, empty place she had retreated to, was still there. It held her, suspended in the dark. She thought of the bridge, the image of the dark water below it, The image she had held in her mind as a release now seemed absurd. She thought of the note on her pillow, the words of weariness. "I'm just tired." It felt like a betrayal. She had been tired, yes. But this was different. Her tiredness had been a passive thing, a slow fade. This was an active, violent erasure. Her choice, the one thing she thought she had controlled, had been stolen from her. It had been taken by the man on the couch, by the demands in the car, and now, completely and brutally, by the voice. The numbness did not break. It hardened. Like water freezing, the passive coldness inside her solidified into something else. It was a new feeling, one she had not felt in a very long time. It was a cold, sharp, and perfectly clear. It was rage. It was not a hot, screaming rage. It was a silent, patient, ice-cold fury. She thought of the note again, folded on her pillow. She imagined her grandmother finding it. She imagined the man who was not her grandfather finding it, his voice thick with a false, saccharine sorrow. She imagined him enjoying the attention, the drama. The thought was a sickness in her stomach. Then she thought of her sister, her little sister, miles away in another state, living with their father. Her sister, who she sent her diner money to, folded inside birthday cards that were never on time. The one person whose photograph, cracked and faded, was hidden under the liner of her drawer. She pictured her sister learning the news. First, the note. The unbearable weight of that chosen departure. And then, later, when Elara did not just disappear but was missing, what would happen? The police would find her. Eventually. Here. Or maybe they wouldn't. Maybe she would just be gone, a ghost in truth. Her sister would be left with that. Left with the knowledge that Elara's last act was one of despair, and that the world had intercepted it with one of pure malice. She would be trapped between those two horrors forever. The thought was a physical blow. It was worse than the pavement, worse than the assault. No. The word formed in her mind, hard and bright. No. The desire for a final escape, the wish for the quiet of the bridge, it did not just fade. It was burned away in an instant, consumed by this new, cold fire. She would not die here. She would not let him be the end of her story. She would not let her sister's memory of her be a folded note and a police report. The decision was absolute. It settled into her bones. She was going to live. But it was more than that. It was not just survival. It was a hunt. She realized, with a sudden, chilling clarity, that she wanted him to be caught. She wanted him to be found. And she was the only one who could do it. The voice had wanted her fear. He had been angry when he received only her absence. He did not know what he had now. He did not know that the empty, detached girl he had taken was gone. He did not know that he had replaced her with something new. She was not a victim. She was a witness. She lay in the dark, and for the first time, she began to listen. She catalogued the sound of the humming appliance. She catalogued the chemical smell. She catalogued the deep, aching throb in her own body. These were not just sensations. They were facts. They were clues. She would get out. She would see the sunrise. And she would remember everything. Time stretched. It became a thick, formless thing. The darkness under the blindfold was absolute, and the only sound was the low, electric hum. Elara lay on the mattress, a statue of coiled waiting. She had practiced this stillness her entire life, waiting for the man on the couch to sleep, waiting for the diner clock to release her. But this was different. This was not waiting to escape. This was waiting to act. She listened to her own body. The throb of pain. The steady, slow beat of her heart, which felt loud in her ears. The ice in her veins remained. Then, a sound. Metal on metal. A key sliding into the lock from the outside. Her heart did not leap. It just stopped, for one hard second, and then resumed its slow, heavy beat. "Stay cold," she told herself. The door opened. She heard the faint shush of air moving as it swung inward. Footsteps. Soft, on the carpet, he was back. She did not move. She did not tense. She kept her breathing perfectly even, a shallow, silent rhythm. She felt the mattress dip on the other side. He did not speak. He just Saturday. The silence was a weapon. He was waiting for her to break. Waiting for the fear to have built up in his absence. He was waiting for her to whimper, She could feel his presence, his attention, like a physical weight in the room. He was enjoying this. He was the cat, and she was the stunned, silent mouse. But she was not stunned. She was calculating. She had a plan. It was a terrible risk. It required her to speak, to engage, to make herself present in a way she had refused to before. It required her to use her knowledge of him against him. The chemical smell, the clean apartment. He was not disorganized. He was methodical. She took a breath, letting it out slowly. She would make the first move. She started. Her voice was a dry, unused croak. She cleared her throat, the small sound loud in the silence. I need to use the bathroom. The silence from the other side of the bed stretched. She could hear his breathing, a slow, steady rhythm. He was considering it. No, he said. The voice was flat, final. The ice in her solidified. This was the moment. She had to push. She had to create a problem he could not ignore. She waited 1-2 beats. I cannot hold it, she said, her voice stronger now, matter of fact. If you do not let me go, I will go right here. On this bed. She heard him inhale, a sharp, angry sound. She had him. She had presented him with two bad choices. Lose control by letting her move, or lose control by having his clean, sterile space violated. She was betting on his obsession. You think you are clever, he hissed. It was not a question. She felt the mattress shift violently as he stood up. Get up. His hand clamped around her arm, the same brutal grip as before, and he hauled her to her feet. The sudden movement made her dizzy, but she locked her knees, forcing herself to stand. He propelled her forward, his hand a rigid guide. She was still blindfolded, moving through a total blackness. Her bare feet counted the steps on the carpet. 1, 2, 3, her foot hit a new surface. It was not carpet, it was cold, hard, and smooth. Tile. The air smelled different, too. The chemical smell was stronger here, mixed with something else, a faint, sharp scent. He shoved her forward and her shin hit something hard and porcelain. She cried out, a small, sharp sound. Be quiet, he snapped. He let go of her arm. Do it. She heard him step back. She heard the door click shut. She was alone. But she knew he was right outside. She could hear the faint sound of his clothing, the sound of him waiting. She had seconds. Her hands flew up, moving with a desperate, silent speed. She did not risk the blindfold. She reached out. Her fingers found a smooth, cold wall covered in more hard tiles. She moved her hand, sweeping it across the surface, pressing her fingertips down. She moved forward 1 step. Her hands found a cold, smooth surface at waist height. A counter. She pressed her palms flat against it. She moved her hands left, found a round, hard knob. A faucet. She touched it, leaving her oils on the metal. She moved her hands right. They met a large, perfectly smooth, cold sheet of glass. The mirror. This was it. She pressed her palms, her fingers, all of her, against the glass. She spread her hands wide, leaving perfect, desperate prints in the darkness. She dragged her hands down, leaving streaks, leaving proof. I was here. I was here. I was here. She smelled something. It was on the counter, a small, hard object. She fumbled for it. A bar of soap. She lifted it to her blindfold, just below her nose. It was not the industrial soap he smelled of. It was flowery. It smelled like roses. It was expensive. It was a mistake. It was his mistake. It was a detail that did not belong. She heard a sound from outside the door, a shuffle of impatience. She dropped the soap. She fumbled for the toilet, found the handle, and flushed it. The sound of the water was a roar. A beautiful, loud sound that covered the frantic pounding of her own heart. She had done it. She had left her mark. She was no longer a ghost. The door opened. His hand was on her arm again, a hot, angry brand. He did not lead her, he dragged her. Her bare feet caught on the transition from the cold tile to the soft carpet, and she nearly fell. He hauled her upright and shoved her, hard. She landed on the mattress with a force that sent a jolt of pain through her already aching body. She did not cry out. She absorbed the impact, her mind a block of ice. The door to the bathroom clicked shut. He was in the room with her. She lay where she had fallen, her limbs artfully still. She kept her breathing shallow, a ghost's breath. But the silence was different. In the car, it had been his silence, the patient, predatory stillness of a hunter. Now, the silence was hers. The air in the room was electric with his frustration. He was not still, he was moving. She heard him pace, the soft thud, thud, thud of his heavy footsteps on the carpet. One side of the room to the other, a caged, angry sound. He was the one who was trapped. She had broken his script. The assault had not given him the release he craved because she had not been there. The bathroom gambit had proven her defiant, not broken. He was a man who needed perfect, methodical control, and she was a variable he could not solve. He needed to re-establish his power. He needed her to be afraid. "You think you are smart," he hissed. The voice was no longer flat. It was tight, vibrating with a rage that was losing its careful composure. Elara remained still, a study in perfect submission. "They are all the same," he muttered, more to himself than to her. The pacing stopped. Always. Always thinking they know. Always pushing. He was not talking to her. He was talking to someone else. "I give them everything," he went on, his voice a low, venomous monologue. "A clean place. Attention. And they throw it away. They just throw it all away." Elara's mind, cold and sharp, seized on the words. A clean place. Attention. She said I was. Too much. His voice cracked, just for an instant, a hairline fracture in the stone. She said I was suffocating. After everything I did for her, she just left. There it was. The entire, pathetic, ugly reason. This was not a monster. This was not a force of nature. This was a man who had been left, a man whose pride had been wounded. And this, all of this, the car, the blindfold, the violation, the clean room, this was his twisted, horrific revenge. He was not a hunter. He was a child throwing a tantrum, a child with a weapon. The ice in Elara's veins did not melt. It sharpened. She knew this man. She did not know his face or his name, but she knew his type. She had lived with a version of him for 3 years. The man on the couch, with his fake concern, his suffocating good girl praise that was just another form of control. She knew how to survive this. She knew how to placate an angry, wounded ego. She had been practicing her entire life. She moved just a fraction, a small, tentative shift on the mattress. The pacing stopped. She felt his attention snap to her. She took a breath, and when she spoke, her voice was not the croak of a victim. It was soft. It was hesitant. It was understanding. She didn't understand, did she? The silence that followed was so profound, so heavy, that Elara could hear the faint, high-pitched ringing in her own ears. The appliance hum seemed to have stopped. The world had stopped. "What?" he whispered, the word a bare exhalation of disbelief. "What did you say?" Elara turned her blindfolded head toward the sound of his voice. "The one who left you," Elara said, her voice a soft, careful caress. She didn't understand. She didn't see how much you care about things, how much you just want everything to be right. She was using his own sickness, his obsession, and framing it as a virtue. She was praising his control. "You," he said, and his voice was choked, "you know nothing." "I know what it's like," she said, and she let a small, genuine tremor of her own pain enter her voice. "I know what it's like when people don't see you, when they don't appreciate all the things you do to make things perfect." She was connecting her world to his. She was building a bridge across the chasm of his violence. He was completely silent. He was listening. He was hooked. This was the moment. The final, terrible gamble. You said you can't keep me," she whispered, as if the thought was a new sad realization. "But maybe you could." His breath hitched. It was a small, sharp sound. "What?" I'm quiet," she said, her voice trembling, as if with fear, but it was with the strain of the lie. "I know how to be quiet. I know how to appreciate things. I wouldn't be like her. The one who left. I would understand." She paused, letting the silence stretch, letting him fill it with his own dark imagination. "I could be your companion," she whispered. We wouldn't have to tell anyone. No one would ever have to know how we met. I could be your girlfriend." The word hung in the sterile air. Girlfriend. She had taken his script, the one where he was the violator and she was the victim, and she had torn it to shreds. She had offered him a new one, a script so twisted, so unthinkable, that it shattered his entire fantasy. He wanted a victim to break. He did not want a willing partner in his own darkness. The thought of this consensual, shared intimacy, was a new kind of violation directed at him. It was a mirror, and he was horrified by the reflection. He did not move. He did not speak. He just stood, frozen, in the center of his clean, dark room. Elara lay on the bed, blindfolded, every muscle screaming with tension. She had thrown the bomb. She had offered him the one thing he could not control, and now, in the total, suffocating silence, she waited. The silence in the room was no longer a simple absence of sound. It was a vacuum. A void where Elara's words had consumed all the air. She could feel his shock. It was a cold, sharp thing, a new presence in the darkness. He did not move. He did not breathe. He was a statue, frozen by an idea so monstrous he could not process it. She had offered him a mirror, and he was staring, paralyzed, at his own reflection. When he finally did move, it was not the slow, methodical movement of a predator. It was a sudden, violent flinch, a recoil. "No," he whispered. The word was not a command. It was a sound of pure, visceral horror. He stumbled back, his foot catching on the carpet. She heard him hit the wall, a dull thud. "No. You are. You are not." He couldn't finish. She had done it. She had terrified him. Her willingness, her understanding, was a sickness he could not comprehend. He wanted to break a victim. He did not want to embrace a confederate. A girl who could so quickly, so calmly, offer to join his darkness was a girl who was as broken, as wrong as he was. And that he could not bear. He was afraid of her. "Get up," he snarled. The command was sharp, panicked. The calm, patient control was gone. He was sloppy. He was scared. His hand found her arm, but the grip was different. It was not the cold steel vice of before. It was a frantic, clumsy clutch, the grip of a man trying to handle something that burned him. He hauled her to her feet. You are." "I cannot," he stammered. He was losing his words. The voice, was becoming incoherent. "We are leaving," he finally bit out. Yes, her mind screamed, a silent, icy triumph. It worked. He shoved her toward the door. "Turn around." She obeyed, her body a perfect picture of submission. Her mind was a live wire. She felt the rough fabric in his hands. The blindfold. He was fumbling with it, his movements jerky. This was her chance. As he brought the fabric to her face, Elara tensed every muscle in her jaw, widening her face, tightening her brow, an imperceptible expansion. She did it just as he pulled the cloth tight, his hands rough and impatient. He was not methodical. He was rushing. He secured the knot, a hard, angry yank. He let her go, and for a second, she was still. She relaxed her face. It was loose. It was not much, just a fraction, a tiny, blessed sliver of give. But it was enough. "Move," he commanded, shoving her again. She heard the door open, the thunk of the deadbolt. She was pulled out into the musty air of the stairwell. Down, she counted. 12, 11, 10. Her feet found the steps, her mind a perfect, cold recorder. 9, 8, 7. She was moving down, back into the world. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The ground was gravel again. She was pushed, stumbling, toward the car. The door was wrenched open. "Get in." On the floor. This was new. He did not want her in the seat. He did not want her near him. He was repulsed. She crammed her body into the small, dark space, her knees jammed against her chest, the floor hard and vibrating beneath her. The smell of oil and old coffee was overwhelming. The door slammed. The driver's door opened and shut. His weight rocked the car. The engine roared to life, that same uneven, sick-sounding rumble. The car moved, lurching over the gravel and then onto smooth pavement. She was on the floor, in the dark, but she was not a victim. She was a weapon, waiting. She kept her body perfectly still, her breathing soft and shallow, mimicking sleep or terror. After a few moments, when his breathing in the seat above her seemed to have settled into a tense, angry rhythm, she moved. Slowly, carefully, she tilted her head. She pressed her face against the side of the car, the cold, vibrating metal. She angled her head down just a fraction. She opened her eyes. Beneath the loose edge of the blindfold, a sliver of the world appeared. It was dark, a blur of motion. She could see the floor, her own knees. She tilted her head up just a fraction more. She saw the dashboard. It was lit by a faint, sickly green glow. And in that glow, she saw a word, a single illuminated word on the panel. It was silver, and it was glowing. Magnum. She stared at the word, burning every letter, every curve into her memory. Magnum, Magnum, Magnum. The car was picking up speed. The hum of the tires changed, growing louder, higher pitched. The air sound changed. It was stronger, a rushing, roaring sound. The interstate. She knew it instantly. She risked a higher angle, peering up. The world outside was a stream of red and white lights. Then, a sudden, bright bloom of green light. An exit sign. She could not read the words. It was too fast, too blurry. But then, she saw them. Just off the highway, rising up into the dark sky, were two identical buildings. They were tall, brightly lit, and perfectly, exactly the same. Two hotels. They were a landmark, a beacon in the rushing darkness. She saw them. She recorded them. Two tall, identical hotels. By the interstate, she had it. She had him. She closed her eyes, letting her head rest against the vibrating floor. The information was safe, locked inside the ice-cold vault of her mind. He was still driving, his angry, panicked breathing filling the car. He thought he was disposing of a problem. He had no idea he was driving his own judge and jury to freedom. The car rolled to a stop, the uneven rumble of the engine cutting off. The silence that filled the small space was absolute, heavy. He was breathing hard, short, angry gasps. The driver's door opened, then his door was yanked open. "Get out," he snarled. He grabbed her, pulling her from the cramped floor space. She stumbled out onto soft, uneven ground. It was not pavement, it was grass. He shoved her, making her walk forward into the blind, open darkness. "Stop." She stopped. She felt him right behind her. "Stay here, count to 500. Do not take the blindfold off before 500. I will be watching you." His voice was a low threat. She stood, frozen. She heard him step away from her. She heard the sound of his footsteps on the soft earth. A car door opened. A car door slammed. The engine roared to life, that same sick, lurching sound. The sound of the tires moved away, fading, until it was just a distant hum. And then, it was gone. The silence that surrounded her was vast. It was not the silence of the room or the car. This was an open, breathing silence. She could hear wind. A faint, high-pitched shush as it moved through. Something. Leaves. She could smell damp earth and pine. She stood perfectly still. The count was forgotten. Was he gone? Or was this a trick? Was he watching from the darkness, his hand holding that cold, round instrument, waiting for her to move, waiting for her to remove the blindfold so he could finish it? The fear was a sudden, cold paralysis, a different kind of ice than the rage. Her body was screaming at her to run, but she was trapped by the not knowing. She forced herself to breathe. He was scared of me. The thought was an anchor. He was scared of me. He wasn't methodical. He was panicked. He wasn't watching. He was fleeing. Her hands rose, shaking so violently she could barely control them. She fumbled at the back of her head. The knot was tight, but it was sloppy. His panic had made his hands clumsy. Her fingers found a loop. She pulled. The knot gave way. The rough fabric fell from her face. The first sensation was the air. It was a sudden, cold, overwhelming rush of open space against her skin, against her eyes. It was so vast, it made her dizzy. The second sensation was the sound. The sound of the wind was a roar, impossibly loud, a living thing. She opened her eyes and was swallowed by a terrifying, infinite blackness, a space with no walls. Her knees buckled. She collapsed to the ground, landing on the soft, damp earth. And then she began to cry. It was not a silent weeping. It was a sound torn from the deepest part of her, a harsh, animal sobbing that she did not recognize as her own. It was the sound of the shock, the violation, the fear, and the impossible, crushing relief. She cried until her throat was raw, until she had nothing left. After a long time, she felt something rough against her cheek. She had fallen against the base of something. She reached out her hands, her fingers splayed. Her hands met a surface. It was not concrete, it was not tile. It was rough, textured, deeply grooved. It was bark. It was solid, it was real, it was impos examples. It was an anchor in the spinning, dark world. She clutched it, her fingers digging into the ancient wood. A tree. She was free. She did not know how long she walked. The world was a mess of sounds. Her own footsteps on the hard, empty pavement. The distant, lonely sound of a truck on a highway. Finally, she found a building with a purpose, a place that was supposed to mean safety. She pushed through the heavy glass doors. The air inside was stale, too warm. A man's voice, bored and thick with fatigue, floated over a high counter. "Can I help you?" "I was taken," Elara said. Her voice was a dry, raw croak. She was put in a small, quiet room. She sat on a hard chair. The man, his voice identified him as Detective Harris, asked her questions. She answered, "My name is Elara. I was taken from the street. On my bicycle, he had an instrument. It was cold. He took me to an apartment. He assaulted me." She gave him the facts. She delivered them one by one, like cold stones. The ice was still there, a shell around her. Her detachment was her armor. She heard the detective shift in his chair. She heard the scratch of his pen. "You seem very calm," he said. His voice was not kind, it was suspicious. "For what you are describing, I am telling you what happened," she said. "Where did you get that?" he asked. It was not a question about her, it was a question about a detail. "That smell, is that pine? I was with a friend earlier," she said, her voice flat. She mentioned Liam. She heard the detective sigh, a heavy, judgmental sound. "A friend, I see." He asked about her home. She told him. She told him about the note. The silence that followed was heavy. "So," Detective Harris said, his voice slow, as if speaking to a difficult child. "You wrote a note. You were having problems at home. You were out very late with an older boy. And now you are here. With this story." "It is not a story," Elara said. The ice was beginning to crack, and a hot, dangerous fury was rising beneath it. "Kid," his voice was falsely patient, the voice of a man who had already made up his mind. "I have been doing this job for 20 years. A girl gets scared, or has second thoughts, she concocts a big story. It happens all the time. I did not concoct this," she said, her voice low and shaking. "Go home, kid," he said, the sound of his chair scraping as he stood up. "Sleep it off, we'll call your grandmother." "You are not listening to me," she yelled. The sound was a shock, a tear in the quiet room. "I'm listening," his voice was hard now, dismissive. "But I am not hearing a victim, I am hearing a runaway." She was shattered. She had survived her captor, fought him with her mind, only to be completely, utterly dismissed by her rescuer. The cold returned, but this time it was the cold of absolute, hollow defeat. "Harris. What is all the shouting for?" A new voice. It was different. It was a woman's. It was sharp, focused, and held no trace of fatigue. "Just a runaway, Kincaid," Harris's voice replied, full of dismissal. "Wasting our time with a fantasy." "I am not a runaway," Elara said. Her voice was not a shout. It was a low, dangerous whisper, the sound of the ice reforming, harder this time. There was a pause. The new woman was assessing her. Elara could feel the weight of her attention, and it was not judgmental. It was analytical. "Harris," the woman's voice said, "go get a coffee, a long one, from the place on 3rd Street. But now," the sound of Harris grunting, the sound of his footsteps, heavy and annoyed, leaving the room, the sound of the door shutting. A chair scraped on the floor. The woman sat down opposite Elara. "My name is Detective Kincaid," the voice said. It was not warm. It was professional, like a doctor's. "I want you to tell me everything, from the very beginning, and I want you to tell me exactly as you remember it. Do not leave out a single thing." Elara took a ragged breath. She started. She told her everything. The diner, the note, the red car, the abduction, the cold instrument, the voice, the assault, the numbness. Kincaid did not interrupt, she just listened. Then Elara got to the part that mattered. I decided to live. Go on, Kincaid said. I made him take me to the bathroom. I knew he was clean. I knew he wouldn't want a mess. I left my prints. On the mirror, and on the wall tiles. And on the faucet. She heard Kincaid's breathing stop. You what? He smells like industrial soap. But there was a bar of soap on his counter. It was different. It smelled like roses. It was expensive. It didn't belong. Rose soap, Kincaid repeated, her voice tight. The sound of a pen scribbling. Then, I scared him. I offered to be his girlfriend, his companion. He was so horrified. He couldn't handle it. He panicked. My God, Kincaid whispered. He was in a hurry when he let me go. The blindfold was loose. I could see. I was on the floor. I saw the dashboard. What did you see? Kincaid's voice was electric. A word. It was lit up. It said Magnum. Magnum, Kincaid repeated, more scribbling. And the interstate. He was on the interstate. I saw an exit. I saw 2 identical hotels. Tall ones. Right by the exit ramp. The twin hotels, Kincaid said, her voice sharp with sudden recognition. I know exactly where you were. I know that exit. And one more thing, Elara said, the final, crucial piece. When he took me into the apartment, I counted. From the gravel to the door. I counted the steps. How many? 12, Elara said. There were exactly 12 steps. There was a long silence. Then Kincaid's voice, low and fierce and full of a sudden, terrible energy. You are not a runaway. You are a miracle. And we are going to find this man. I promise you. Elara was in a different room now. It was quiet. Someone had brought her a blanket, but she did not use it. She sat on a soft chair, a statue of ice, and she listened. The sounds from the main station had changed. The bored, tired hum was gone. It was a hive, buzzing with a new, frantic purpose. She heard Kincaid's voice, clear and commanding, cutting through the noise. I want a patrol car at that exit, the one by the twin hotels. Now, lock it down. Run it. Magnum, what car has that on the dash? A Dodge. Get me a list of every red Dodge Magnum registered in this county. Get me apartment layouts. Every complex within a mile of that exit. I am looking for a unit with an exterior staircase. I want to count. I need 12 steps. Phones were ringing, a chorus of urgent demands. Voices were overlapping. Yes, wake the manager up. I don't care what time it is. Hours passed. It felt like a lifetime. Elara did not move. Then, a new voice, shouting, cutting through the din. Detective, I got one. Third complex we checked. The manager says there's a unit, apartment 12B. It's got an exterior stairwell, he says. He says it's 12 steps up. Get a warrant, Kincaid shouted. Get a team. We are going in, now. More waiting. The silence in Elara's room was almost as loud as the noise outside. She was vibrating, a string pulled too tight. She heard Kincaid's voice, distant, crackling over a radio. We are at the door. We are making entry. A crash. The sound of wood splitting, distant, muffled shouting. A long, agonizing silence. Then, Kincaid's voice, back on the radio, strained and breathless. The unit is clear. He is not here. But, wait. A pause. Tell Elara, we found the soap. It's in the bathroom. It's Rose. They found the car first. A red Dodge Magnum, registered to a Marcus Fuller. It was parked 2 blocks from the apartment, hidden in plain sight. They found him an hour later. He was at his job, a night shift position at a bottling plant, as if it were just another day. Now, Elara was in a small, quiet room. Kincaid sat with her. Her voice was gentle. We have him, Kincaid said. His name is Marcus. Now, I need you to do one last thing. It is the most important thing. I know, Elara said. Her voice was a dry whisper. I am going to put a folder on the table in front of you. It has 6 photographs inside. They are all men who look similar. I need you to look at all of them. Carefully. Take your time. You need to be absolutely, 100% sure. I am sure, Elara said. You can't be, Kincaid said, her voice soft. You told me you never saw his face. I didn't, Elara said, her hand resting on the folder. But I saw his hands when he fumbled with the blindfold. And I saw his eyes. For just a second, in the bathroom mirror, Kincaid's breath hitched. You never told me that. I'm telling you now, Elara said. He is not here. He cannot hurt you. Look at the folder. Elara opened it. Her hand was perfectly steady. The ice was absolute. 6 faces. 6 pairs of eyes. She scanned them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Her finger came down. It did not tremble. It tapped the paper, a hard, sharp rap. A judge's gavel. That is the man, she said. Her voice was flat, devoid of all emotion. Number 5. That is the voice. Kincaid let out a breath she seemed to have been holding for hours. Take your time, Elara. Look at number 6. Just to be sure. Elara looked up from the photo. She looked directly into Kincaid's eyes. I don't need to look at number 6. I lived it. That is the man who took me. Kincaid closed the folder. Let's go home, Elara. Elara was not in the room, but Kincaid told her everything. Much later, Kincaid was in the interrogation room with him. We found the car, Marcus. We found the soap. We found her fingerprints all over your mirror. We found her. His voice, she said, was calm. The same calm, patient voice from the car. I don't know what you are talking about. I was at work. She identified you, Marcus. It's over. She couldn't have. She never saw me. It is impossible. She saw you. She heard you. She remembered you. She told us about your ex-girlfriend. She told us how she left you. How she said you were suffocating. A sharp intake of breath. The calm was broken. What else? He whispered. She told us about her offer, Kincaid said, her voice low. He said nothing. She offered to be your girlfriend, didn't she, Marcus? She offered to be your little companion. That's why you let her go, wasn't it? A long, ragged silence. And then a new sound. A dry, scraping sob. She was wrong, he whimpered. The voice was gone, replaced by a pathetic, broken sound. She was like me. She understood it. She wasn't too afraid. It was horrible. It wasn't supposed to be like that. Kincaid just waited. She was supposed to be scared, he cried, his voice high and thin. She was supposed to be broken, but she scared me. Yes, Kincaid's voice was cold as steel. She did? I had to get rid of her, he whispered. I had to get her away from me. She was the monster. The sound of a courtroom, a gavel striking wood, a sharp, final sound. A judge's voice, clear and strong, sentencing Marcus Fuller for his crimes. For the other women, the ones who had not been as lucky, the ones who had not been as cold, the ones whose voices he had silenced forever, Elara was there. She stood and she spoke. She did not read a victim's statement. She did not cry. She read a statement of fact, her voice clear and steady, a voice for the women who could not speak. The sound of time passing. 5 years. The sound of a police radio, static and voices. A patrol car humming through the night. Unit 12, we have a possible runaway. A young girl, 17, last seen near the interstate exit by the twin hotels. A new voice, a calm, strong voice, replied to the radio. This is Deputy Elara. I'm on my way. The sound of a car door opening. Footsteps on pavement. She found her. A girl, 17, sitting on a curb, her body vibrating with an anger that Elara recognized was just fear. You're not my mother, the girl spat, her voice thick. No, Elara said. Her voice was not the voice of a cop. It was not the voice of a victim. It was just strong. She sat on the curb, not too close, giving the girl her space. I'm not, but I know what it's like to want to run. You don't know anything about me, the girl whispered, her anger cracking. I know, Elara said, her voice quiet in the vast, open darkness. I know you're scared, and I know you're tired, but you are not alone, and I am here to listen. Elara did not see a victim. She saw a survivor. She, the girl who was saved by her own cold rage and the memory of a tree, had become the protector. She had become the voice, not for the dead, but for the living. Thank you for joining me on this journey. It has been an intense, dark story to tell, but a necessary one. I hope Elara's strength, her cold intelligence, and her will to survive have resonated with you as much as they have with me. We will see you next time.